of the most intelligent billionaires in Europe, also want to be asked to pay a larger percentage of their incredible wealth to help support their countries. They do not want to live in the world that is being created by all this wealth being swept up. So, and in San Francisco, we have 24 billionaires. That's quite a lot for such a small city. And I think we can do them a favor by allowing them to contribute more to our city. We can also start a municipal bank where we can put the money that has been going to the Bank of America, that is our city pensions, into our own bank, so we make money. And also public power. Let's take it back from PG&E. We've got to be more competent than them, and we can have cheaper power and also more money for the city. Thank you.
We're now moving around to questions. I'll remind the candidates that you do have chances to respond to each other's answers. That's why you have 3 blue cards sitting in front of you and just waiting to be used. All right, the second round. These questions are about preventing cuts to our services, the budget, transit, parks, etc. The first question will be from Ms. Reese. The second question will be from Mr. Chu.
So I'll ask a question to Mr. Chu. So David, you always talk about being the only candidate without a car, that you are a big user of public transportation. And I know from meeting many people at bus stops and riding many buses myself across the city, we have a lot of issues. And the way that people talk about getting out of them is through innovation and more revenue. And I want to ask you a revenue question. One thing I proposed as part of my campaign is a $100 vehicle mitigation fee as a near-term way to bring more revenue into Muni. And I'm curious, are you supportive of measures, that measure and others?
Sounds like a one-time one here. So I am supportive of measures like that. In fact, for the last couple of years, I have been championing bringing back the so-called vehicle license fee, which is a fee that had existed in California for 5 decades until Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger rolled it back in 2003, which blew a $6 billion hole in our state budget and blew a $50 to $70 million a year revenue source in our own budget here locally. So I absolutely think that if we're going to prevent Muni from seeing our services continually cut and seeing fares increase, if we want to figure out how to make sure that our pedestrian walkways are not the most dangerous intersections in the state, which is what we have today, if we want to make sure that our cyclists are safe, we have to invest in the MTA, we have to invest in Muni, and I think we need to think about these sorts of measures before we consider additional service cuts or additional fare increases. So yes, I would support that.
And the next question is from Mr. Chu. After that will be Ms. Aliana here.
So I'm going to stay on the same topic with regards to transit and ask John Avalos a question that, about a concern that he and I have shared, which is access of transit to southeast neighborhoods. I represent the northeast neighborhoods of the city, and I often ride the number 19. When I've attempted to ride the number 19 Polk Street all the way through to the southeast, through these neighborhoods, I feel like I might as well get on a car and take a trip down to LA, because it takes that long sitting on these buses. And I want to ask John if you could talk about your plans to improve transit access to the southeast neighborhoods, because I know we share this goal.
Thank you for your question. It's a big topic, not just in the Excelsior, where I live, in the Crocker Amazon neighborhood that use the 14 Mission line, but it's a big issue, not just in the southeast sector, but in Sunset as well. You have the N Judah line that does not go all the way down to the end of the line, and people often get dropped off at 19th Avenue, and they're forced to wait for the next bus line to come. It's a huge problem on the 14 line as well. We have a transit first city policy, but it's not a transit first city out in the outer parts of the city, and I want to have a citywide perspective from the vantage point of our neighborhoods that are not in the middle of the city. And so we have to look at how we equitably use our capital dollars to shore up our lines, our our muni lines and our muni wires down the system. We have to make sure that our operation funding can be extended out to those areas as well. By not extending the dollars out to the more far-flung parts of San Francisco, where I live, you're forcing more people to get into cars, and the car becomes more of the greater option. So I need to fight with the MTA every day to make sure that the planners are focused in my neighborhood. And as mayor, I'm going to make sure that the planners are going to be fighting for dollars from the MTC, from the federal government, and our local dollars to move and stretch them out to the outer parts of San Francisco, where so many of us live, and where we can have a just and equitable transit system that we should all have in San Francisco.
Ms. Elliott Peter is next up, followed by Liz Baum and then Mr. Mayoral.
Thank you, Tony. My question is for Supervisor Avalos. John. Before I left the Board of Supervisors, I asked the budget analyst to do an audit on our child care facilities, on 3 of them, First 5, DCYF, and Public Health. And what they found was that, for after-school programs, what we found was that we had $1 million on the table that had not been spent and a waiting list of 150 families. How do we work through our budget, and how do we make sure that the resources that we have that are available to people get to people, and that we are spending what has been allocated?
Great, thank you for the question. And actually, my family are the beneficiaries of our child care dollars. I have kids in public school who spend about 3 to 4 hours a day in after-school programs at San Francisco Community School. And so my family is using the services, and we benefited directly from those services. We've also been recipients, users of child care facilities in San Francisco as well, family daycare providers and child care-based centers. What I'm doing, even now as a supervisor, is I've been meeting with child care providers, with the Human Services Agency, with the Department of Children, Youth and Family, and with the First 5 Commission to look at how we can consolidate all of our child care functions into one office. I've been meeting with folks for about 3 months, and I'm going to initiate legislation to create a task force to move us forward with a study of knowledge and an evaluation of how we're going to be able to make that merger successful and effective, to shore up every dollar we can that's going to go for providing slots for childcare, providing slots for after-school programs. This is one of the areas where we can truly consolidate our city functions, and one that I am committed to, and one that will have an immediate benefit for families, as well as for people who provide childcare, who need greater professional development. And I look forward to seeing those changes happen within a year.
Ms. Baum.
This is also a question for John Avalos. In your first year in office, you served as the budget chair, and you admirably spoke out about the bloat in the police and fire department budgets. However, when the fire department threatened you with a recall, you backed down. And now, 2 years later, where the city is broke and these departments are even more bloated, when you are mayor, will you stand up to the police and the fire departments?
Wow. There's a Johnny Cash song I really like, written by Tom Petty, called "I Won't Back Down." I sang it during that time because I didn't back down. What I did was, we saw that there was huge general fund cuts that had happened to Department of Children, Youth and Families, to the Human Services Agency, to the Department of Public Health, to the Rec and Park Department, and we saw huge general fund increases to the fire department and the police department. Part of it was overtime spending as well. And a lot of it's in salaries. And what we did, we made a cut. It was a symbolic cut, but it was a cut showing that there was a real inequity about how we were doing our budgets. And from that, we were able to make sure that we could actually, without impacting public safety services, we were able to get $6 million from the fire department. A lot of that moved into Rec and Park, into healthcare programs, into education programs, and we were able to help reduce the police department budget and find some fat in the police department budget, more than anyone had ever found before, about $3 million. And that was very effective to make sure that we can have services that really took care of our most vulnerable, but also everyone. Everyone enjoys our parks. We were able to keep lifeguards together in jobs and rec directors in jobs as well. And it's something that I feel really shows how much that I'm willing to take very risky positions to make sure that we have a budget that works for all of us. And I learned from Gavin Newsom at that time as well. I didn't agree with Gavin Newsom's positions on the budget, but I saw how difficult a stand and position he took on his positions, and that's something I think is very, something I would like to be able to have in my life as well, that ability to stand up to that kind of pressure.
Mr. Potrero, followed by Mr. Avalos.
My question is for David Chu. David, we've heard Mayoral talk a lot about something he's proud of, getting a balanced budget submitted to the Board of Supervisors. But already we are seeing that revenues at the state level are not coming in to the degree that they should. So my question is, have you done any analysis yet as to what the projections are, whether it will be any mid-year cuts? And if so, what would be your priorities of what to protect out of the general fund to make sure that San Francisco is most vulnerable and protected in these tough budgetary times?
So it's actually up to the Mayor's Budget Office and our controller to look at the analyses for these mid-year potential shortfalls, but these are questions that we are asking. And I do anticipate that things are probably going to get a little worse before they get better. Certainly with the state situation, certainly with the national economy, our revenues haven't had the rosiest picture in recent years. From my perspective, where I would cut first, I think there are many aspects of our bureaucracy that need significant work. So for example, we ask, why aren't we creating more jobs as a city? We have 15 city departments that regulate the business community. 14 city departments provide workforce programs. John and Michaela talked about the fact that we've got 3 agencies today that compete to set childcare policy. We have some of the most dangerous pedestrian intersections in the state. 12 city departments share the responsibility of governing safety on our streets. And I think before we cut basic city services, which would obviously be a top priority, public safety and public health, or services to our most vulnerable, I think we've got to eliminate the redundancies, streamline, have some accountability in city government that we just have not had in many, many years. And I think we need a mayor who is ready to do that, and I hope to have that opportunity.
This is a question for Bevan Duffy. Let's see. I had actually met David Chu a few years back. When I first met him, we were working on changing from a payroll tax to a gross receipts tax. We actually had crafted legislation that never got enacted, and now we're talking about doing it again. Bevan, what would you do to create progressive taxation in San Francisco? What do you want to see achieved, and what kind of revenue would you like to be able to bring in that's new revenue to our city and county?
Thank you. Most of us have talked as candidates about the need to reform the payroll tax and its role as a job inhibitor in San Francisco. In Los Angeles, they brought in a consultant who did a stakeholder process for about 1.5 years and really looked at the difference between a bakery and a gas station and how businesses function and what the impacts are and how you tax that business. And then it was brought before the electorate, and so that's definitely something that I would like to see happen. What I'd also like to talk about in terms of budgeting, though, is being an outcome mayor. And you can talk about pushing boxes together, you can talk about consolidation, you can talk about zero-based budgeting, but for me, it's making an investment and what's the outcome for that investment. So I've talked a lot about our problem with chronic public inebriates and the fact that we have 225 individuals who are chronic alcoholics and that we spend $13.5 million on those individuals. And that those folks are bouncing from shelters to emergency rooms to sobering centers to jails, and that that's not an efficient way to respond, and that by creating pre-treatment housing, Seattle with just 75 units was able to save $4 million in the first year. I can tell you about an experience I had with Luis Herrera, the city librarian, where I saw, when I was on the budget committee as a member, we were spending $250,000 on security at the Main, and what the issues were is that there were a number of people who were homeless, and there were a number of other patrons who found it uncomfortable when they saw someone doing laundry in the restroom. And I talked to Luis and said, look at this problem from the upside, which is it's so difficult to case manage people on the street. And if you hire 2 case managers to work